Annyeong, haseyo, substreamers. I'm Joseph, this is Substream, and I'm recording here from Seoul, South Korea. I'm here for a conference. It's a beautiful city, but our first story today doesn't come from South Korea. It actually comes from Malaysia. Pay close attention because you might resonate with some of this story. Back in November 2021, there's this 27-year-old guy. His name's Chin Yi Xuan, right? He's from Kuala Lumpur, capital of Malaysia. Now, he sat down and he poured his heart out on Facebook Live. He said, I'm 27, I'm still single, I'm still living with my parents, and I'm still trying to figure out life. Now, a lot of people resonated. He was and is a self-employed blogger running a page called No Money La, right? It's a kind of a Malay expression. No Money La. He'd quit his tech job to chase his dreams of being a financial blogger, but the weight of expectation just crushed him, and it's not easy to build a following, I can tell you, because slow growth is just part of the process for a lot of people. But it wasn't just his project that was suffering, right? Marriage, a house, stability, all of these things, he just couldn't get them because he didn't have any money. He couldn't afford it. Now, this very raw post that he put together went very viral in Malaysia and other countries, and it racked up tens and then hundreds of thousands of views and likes and comments. Countless millennials saw themselves in his problem. Of course, cost of living crisis, we've got soaring house prices, salaries that feel like they haven't moved, and just recently there was a headline that said something along the lines of, millennials are the poorest generation ever. That's quite a hard thing to hear as a millennial. The good news for Chen is that post really helped him. It helped his blog take off. So, being raw and authentic, it's quite good sometimes. Now, data and research suggest that millennials, and that's people born between 1981 and 1996, have a higher average household income than any previous generation. And yet, here's the kicker, individuals have barely earned more, right? Individual earnings have barely moved. Student debt has increased at an extraordinary level. Home ownership has dropped, and the cost of living has skyrocketed. How does that make sense? How can millennials earn more and yet be in such a worse position? It's because we're forced to share homes. That's pretty much it. A lot of millennials feel forced to be in a relationship or to live with other millennials to be able to afford life. And that is an extraordinary thing. Now, for less privileged millennials, it's tougher. Now, if those with a good or average income are struggling, imagine those who are really deep in the trenches. The poorest segment of millennials are the ones that are really suffering the most from this financial crisis that we're going through. And it's because of that poorest segment that we are being labelled the poorest generation ever, because the highest segment are one of the highest earning groups of people ever, right? The top 30% of earning millennials. The good news is, millennials, if you're watching this, we will soon hand over the crown to our young friends Gen Z. But unfortunately, that time is not here yet. Let's move on. Now, you may be wondering, okay, what are the numbers? Do you have some data to back this up? Now, I do. I did find some. I've got it. But it's so US-centric, and that kind of defeats the point, right? I've got viewers from all over the world. I'm in Seoul, but I live in Thailand. You might be in, somewhere in Africa or South Asia, who knows? So me giving you bundles of US-centric data is just not that useful. Being a millennial, it's not a national thing, it's an international thing, it's a whole generation. So when we suffer as a global collective. Now, I can say that from the data I did compile, on paper, the numbers have gone up. The earnings have gone up. They've gone up and up. Earning potential is higher. Household income is especially higher largely because of dual income households. Now, the Pew Research Center, I do remember they said that individual earnings have sat flat for about 50 years for people who don't have a university degree, but for people who do have a university degree, it's gone up considerably. Well, you can educate your way out of a financial crisis, it seems, except as you know, you're probably saying it in your head right now, the burden of student debt is one that is very hard and heavy to bear. So like many of you watching, I kind of asked this question, and I wasn't sure if it was a rhetorical question or if it was something that I could actually go and find a real bona fide answer to. And my question was, why aren't we getting richer if household income is going up? Now, to say cost of living crisis is to oversimplify, right? Net worth is not that straightforward, right? People are getting richer, or at the top especially, as I said, dual income couples are getting much richer. They're doing very well for themselves. But single millennials aren't quite reaching the cost of living, right? So if each month you're in a deficit, even if you're a high earner, if you live in a deficit each month, then you're getting poorer, right? That's simple kind of economics. Now, even single millennials outperform previous generations, especially in terms of what net worth used to look like for people in their 20s and 30s generations ago. But we have this thing called golden handcuffs. And that is where the more you earn, the more you spend. And it's very easy to spend, but it's not very easy to earn more. So with social media and culture and just changing attitudes and behaviors, it may simply be the case that millennials are not as good at restrictive spending as previous generations. And so a new crisis has emerged, especially among high-earning single millennials, that is negative net worth. Let me explain. By the way, Korea, we've talked about it in previous videos. It's, I believe, the oldest country in the world in terms of average age. They have a huge fertility crisis. Everywhere I go, Seoul is full of old people, and they all stare at me like I'm an absolute alien. I am an absolute alien, but it's weird to be stared at in such a way. Now, negative net worth is when you're worth less than zero. And I mean that financially. Please, don't have your feelings hurt. That is higher than ever before for the lowest quartile of millennials. And it's not just student debt, but student debt is the main one. The other one is credit card debt. Because of credit card debt, it leads to young people with poor financial records and poor credit scores, and that means it's harder for them to get loans and get access to capital, which means that they then can't buy homes, and so the cycle continues. So we also have like the lowest home ownership rates of any generation. A lot of millennials believe that they will never, ever in their lifetime own a home. And I think that's really sad. I own my home, I worked hard and saved for it, and I love it, right? And I just want to tell millennials, don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. There is always a way. You know, you may have to change what you do or where you live, but if owning a home is a dream for you, you can do it eventually. Please believe that. You know you're capable of anything. The problem, as I've said, is the poorest section of millennials. And it's not the lowest third, it's the lowest quarter who really damage the statistics for millennials. What I'm getting at here is that when they say, oh, millennials are the poorest generation ever, it's actually just because the bottom 25% of millennials are so poor and underperforming financially and economically that it brings the entire average down for the whole generation. And it's not because they're reckless or love to buy lattes or go out and eat avocado toast, as is a bizarre stereotype. It's not because we love travel, and it's not because we buy clothes that we probably don't need to. It's actually all to do with pretty much one thing: student debt. And of course it is. Student debt is absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't matter where you're from in the world. Well, I mean, it kind of does, because some countries are wonderful and offer free education. But in a lot of countries, the student debt is enormous. In the US, it's 6 figures. In the UK, it's 5 figures. Other parts of the world, it's huge, and it's become normal for governments to loan their students the money to pay for their education, then to slap interest rates on it, to hike up the prices as they go, and to basically tie them into a lifelong debt, or, you know, decades-long debt that makes them indebted to the country. And some people really struggle to pay back these student loans. Now, imagine you pay for let's say a medical degree, right, to become a doctor, and you don't quite make it, you're not good enough, you don't enjoy it, but you're hundreds of thousands of dollars down the drain on that. You now cannot work as a doctor to make the income required to pay back your student debt. Now, of course, this is just one example, but it rings true for so many people that the expected earnings that they really hoped they'd get after university just didn't materialize. And so they're saddled with this debt that they can't really pay back, while the interest on it sees that debt increasing. Now, I have a little bit more data here for you. It's about student debt. So also from the Pew Research Center, which does a lot of research into this kind of stuff. They said that with millennials, the student debt for them between 1998 and 2016 doubled, right? The median debt went from 12,800 back in 1998 to 19,000 in 2016, and has continued to rise then, right? So now it's over like 25,000 USD. Other research that I found kind of corroborates this information, and it says that most millennials, the average millennial, is more likely to have debt exceeding their average annual income. Let me break that back down to what we just said. If the cumulative income over 10 years is about 446,000, so 44,600 per person, then the average millennial should have, this is in the US, more than $44,000 worth of debt. I think that's crazy. That's really quite a lot of debt. And because of that debt, yeah, as we've spoken about, it's really hard to get access to capital and credit and to get a home. And you just kind of become a victim of circumstance, and partially your own doing, but partially trying to get ahead desperately. Many of us millennials were teenagers back during the Great Recession, they call it, back in 2008. And for some of us, our careers were just starting to go places. I mean, I'm talking about the older millennials, right? The very oldest millennials. That's when their careers were kicking off. Me, I was like 16 when that happened. I kind of remember it, but it didn't really impact me so much. A lot of young people, or people who went through that and suffered from that, said that was our world war, which is quite insane. What happened with those is they were hugely disruptive to home ownership and earning potential and all of that stuff. But we have had our own delayed milestones to contend with, right? That means pushing back things like home ownership and marriage and procreation, which of course here where I am in Seoul is a massive issue. So this is not just a US or UK or European problem, this is a huge problem here in Seoul. The young people here feel that they can't afford to start families, can't afford to buy their homes. Look at Singapore, look at Hong Kong. There's not enough property. The young people don't know what to do, and so they're leaving, and then people are moving to other parts of the world. Millennials are very spread out. There's a huge millennial diaspora. Previous generations didn't have to such extent. When you're a foreigner in another country, it's much harder to buy a property, to get access to capital. You have to become a cash buyer, which is very hard to do. So again, the cycle continues. It almost feels like all of the odds are against millennials, being a success and having homes and financial stability. That really is how it feels to me. We are caught in this cycle where it's really hard for us to win. And so many millennials feel like that. I have many friends, close friends, who feel that they are just a poor millennial that is hard to escape from this cycle and work their way out of this cost of living crisis, right? They got to contend with rent and taxes and the economy and the labor situation. They find it hard to find work and find meaningful work and find, well-paying work. And of course, some of that is self-limiting beliefs, but it's also born out of their real life experiences. But I guess that's really a story for another video. I've got more I want to say on this topic. If you're still watching, thank you very much, by the way. You can go down and smash subscribe. We're so close now to 500 subs. Come on, guys. Let's get to 500. That unlocks some new features. So if you're watching this, please help us out. We're trickling along. We're so close. Now, I can't just speak anecdotally for the whole video, so let me give you some actual data. Good morning. The actual data. Millennials, my generation, over the last 10 years, the median cumulative income for people aged 25 to 34, right, is 446,000. So over 10 years, averaging about 46,000 a year, or 44,000 a year, sorry, that's not too bad. This is in US dollars, right? So this data comes from the US, let's say. I'm sorry, but this is US-centric data. Very hard to find global ones, and it's always going to be warped by richer countries and by poorer countries. So now Gen X, the generation above us, their average cumulative earnings over a decade were 417,000. So we were like almost 10% higher. Baby boomers was 362,000. There's like quite a big difference there, right? This does suggest that income growth over time has grown, right? But the change of culture, right, let's say, because that 50 years ago people lived a more traditional lifestyle. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but the man went out to work and the wife stayed at home and reared the kids, and so people were able to live on one income. Nowadays, I say 50 years, it could be longer than that really, but it's probably closer to 70 or 80. But these days, you have two people going out to work, getting full incomes and coming home, and still kind of struggling. I saw a video on Instagram yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, and it was a comedy guy, and he said, I don't know how my colleagues survive with children on the same payslip that I get because I'm really struggling. And he had this little song and dance. And it was kind of funny, but it was also kind of sad, and it highlighted the fact that this is a real problem. And this guy, who's single, doesn't understand how his colleagues who are married with children actually do it on the same paycheck. And to be honest, I don't understand either. Right, I want to wrap this up. I want to conclude this and kind of summarize everything we've said. Basically, how poor are millennials? The answer is pretty poor. But it's complicated. It's complex. We've been through this. We've got loads of debt. We've got loads of issues. And we've got a cost of living crisis that's kind of out of control. But at the same time, the highest quartile are like the highest earners ever. The lowest quartile have the most debt ever. And it's a really complex issue. If you're in a stable relationship watching this as a millennial, you probably don't feel it because, the data suggests that those in a stable relationship or a marriage as a couple who are both millennials with good salaries are thriving right now. They're actually doing the best in pretty much ever. Now, some segments, which is the let's say the least educated and the marginalized, face greater financial challenges, lower net worth and higher debt levels. What you've got is the most educated have the most debt and the least educated have the most debt, and the people in the middle have the lowest debt, which is kind of bizarre. Now, for me, it might just be my personality, my approach to life, and growing up, through financial crisis and, seeing my parents, do whatever they needed to do. I am quite happy in the gig economy, freelancing, doing different stuff, being creative, trying to make money in different ways, adapting every month, doing what I have to do. Before this video, I never considered that it was something that was forced on me by societal change, by economic distress. It was just how I chose to structure my life and my work, and that's given me great freedoms. And yeah, I've got some debt like most people my age, as you know from this video, but it doesn't cripple me. This 9 to 5, 5 to 9 gig economy, freelance culture, yeah, that's a byproduct. Having mountains of student debt, that's to do with your government, right? That's less to do with society, more about your government making you the bearer, a generational bearer of debt burden. There's not much you can do about that. Of course, the catch-22 is you want to educate yourself more, you're going to have to take on more debt. Not in every country, but it's usually the case. So, keep pushing, guys. Story's not over yet. If this hit home, if you're a millennial, you enjoyed hearing me rambling for the last 20 minutes about money, millennial debt, and how poor we are as a generation, go hit subscribe. If not, go listen to some cheerful music, because I don't want this depressing topic to ruin your day. Guys, thank you for watching. This is Substream. I'm Joseph. I guess I'll see you in the next video. bye for now. I hope I'll see you in the next video at least. That'd be nice.